Have on our bench racing hotline from the Sporting News, Bob Pockcrass joins us. Hey, Bob, how have you been?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
Hey, we're terrific. We got to get it out of the way, and I kidded you about it last night when I was texting you. You know, there was a big uproar about the fact that your mother had to, talk to you about your tooth problem that you had there that you put up on Twitter. Is the tooth taken care of? Mom called me. You know, she wanted to make sure that I address this for you.
Yeah, I have my tooth taken care of. I had popped the veneer off, and everybody was making fun of me on Twitter. And my 77-year-old mother emailed me all worried about my tooth because she had read about it on Twitter. I never thought I'd have to answer to I didn't realize that in this world that my mom would be learning about me on Twitter. It's not something I was expecting 3 or 4 years ago.
It is amazing the power of social media at this point. So at least it shows that everybody is following you as far as your tweets go. Let's talk a little bit about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, not only did I get a note from her, but this is very embarrassing, but I was opening a Slim Jim package with my teeth, which is how I popped the veneer off. And Conagra Foods actually tweeted to me, the people who make Slim Jims, wanting to know what happened. I don't know if they're one of their lawyers, but they tweeted to me.
Well, I think you can work that into some sort of a deal. I believe that's got to be lucrative somehow.
That's a connection you got to use somehow, Bob.
I guess. I don't know. All right, go ahead. Racing.
Well, let's talk racing here for a minute. It seems we should do that, I suppose. One of the big things, of course, Tony Stewart was all upset about, the way things kind of played out. There were other drivers that weren't happy as well, with the wrecks that were going on, with the overheating. And yet it was a pretty entertaining race for the most part. I didn't see a huge difference between this Talladega race and a lot of other ones.
No, especially, if you go back a couple of years back behind the two-car tandem, it was a pretty typical Talladega race, about 120 laps of guys kind of just feeling each other out, and then 60, 70 laps of really kind of hard-nosed, a lot of drafting and some wrecks at the end. So, it's interesting. You talk to Jeff Gordon, he says they've got to open up the grills a little bit so that they can race a little more. You talk to Carl Edwards, he says, hey, those guys just need to work on their radiators and cooling systems, and they'll be fine.
Well, I guess it does depend. Neither Carl Edwards nor Jeff Gordon really having that great of a season. So I find it interesting that they have two different opinions. But, that's not unusual. Carl Edwards has really kind of been the one guy who's really kind of touted the NASCAR bandwagon and a lot of this stuff. He just says, you know what, we need to be better drivers. Mm-hmm.
Well, Carl's a guy, all the drivers, a lot of them want more downforce. I think he'd rather have less downforce, it just they put it on the driver's hands and make it wheel them. But you had Roger Penske on. He also said after the race, now granted his cars won, but he also said after the race, hey, we just take the rules and we'll deal with them and race. And that's the attitude you got to have.
Well, it's kind of funny, you talk about Carl Edwards saying, hey, we need less downforce and we'll drive the car and we'll be better drivers. And over the last few weeks when, all the track repaving stuff is going on and the stuff with Bristol, all the drivers that we have talked to have really said that they would rather have more control of the car. They don't or truck, depending on which series it was, but they almost to a man said, you know what, I'd rather be the guy that's in charge. I want to have the feel for the car. We'll loosen it up. Let me be the one who decides where I want to go, and I want to be less dependent on aero.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, but obviously if you're a driver, you want as much downforce as you can because, hey, that makes it easier to drive, right, most of the time. So I think that they obviously feel, most of them feel like, hey, put me in control of as much as I can, and then that way it's easier for me to tweak on it.
What do you expect is going to happen this week at Darlington? Anything unusual? Will there be any kind of, we're getting back to the payback sort of things, I guess. Do you expect anything between Sam Hornish and Danica Patrick will continue on with that deal or any of the other kind of wacky stuff that's going on? Darlington seems to be the place where guys decide that this is the place for the payback.
Yeah, I don't expect a whole lot between Sam and Danica. I would say Danica is apparently feeling bad about it, that she didn't mean to put him in the wall. It's just meant to give him a tap. So I would assume that if they're racing pretty in a tight situation, she'll give him as much room as possible. But, hey, this is about the time of the year. You're 11, you're 10 races into the year. Guys are hearing the murmurs about their jobs or are worried about making the chase. And, this is the time where they start pushing things. This is the time where, hey, they've got to make something happen. And so I think, after you get through Talladega, now's kind of the time to go. This is the make or break time as far as for guys who aren't having great seasons. And so I think that's kind of what lends itself to Darlington, possibly kind of bringing out, either a little bit extra tempers or a little bit extra aggression.
And we're talking to Bob Pockcrass from the Sporting News. Bob, that's what I was going to ask you about. 10 races into this thing, some drivers have underachieved in a major way. Who's actually got some heat on him at this point, real heat?
Well, I mean, I would say if you're Joey Logano, you got some heat on him, but he ran kind of well at the start of the year, and Kyle Busch wasn't running all that well either. So you looked at it, you said, well, as long as he was, right there with Kyle, he'd be okay. But Kyle has surged recently, and Joey hasn't. So I think he's got some pressure on him. I would say Jamie McMurray, he's got to show something. He's in a contract year. I'd say those two guys. And then you look at guys, some of the new guys like Eric Almirola, AJ Allmendinger. They certainly aren't going to be replaced, next week. But they've got to feel like that they've got to perform a little bit better, in order to guarantee themselves another year with the teams that they're at.
Yeah, kind of follow up on that question. The Allmendinger's had a couple of really good qualifying runs the last 2 weeks on the pole 2 weeks ago, on the front row again this week, and then not able to close the deal in the race. Do you think does he have some real heat on him at Penske?
I think that, one thing in his favor is that he's got a rookie crew chief in Todd Gordon. So he's, so I think you got to take that into consideration sometimes on, their race performance, because Todd's just learning himself. So I would say he's going to get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but I think by the end of the year, they're going to expect for him to be closing the races the way he's starting the races.
Well, talk about Eric Almirola a little bit. Of course, he got a new crew chief. Mike Ford steps in there. Is Mike Ford in a position where he can make relatively quick changes to that team to turn it into a contender?
In some ways, I mean, he's obviously can bring some new ideas and maybe a different attitude. I mean, the one thing he can't really do is ask for the cars to be built a whole lot different. They get their cars from Roush. He might be able to ask for a couple of things, but that's not something that he'd be able to change all that quickly. But I think more they just wanted to see if somebody else can maybe a guy who's kind of used to calling more races, maybe a little more seat of your pants racer than Greg Irwin, and maybe less engineering, and see if that kind of works with Eric a little bit better going forward.
We're talking with Bob Pockcrass from the Sporting News. Do you get a feel for the stability of that Richard Petty Motorsports team? Is it in a stable position at this point? I mean, obviously, huge problems, 18 months ago came from the brink of almost nothingness, but are they on a stable enough financial situation right now that they can move forward, or are they just in a treading water sort of situation?
Well, I mean, they're in a situation where they don't know who their manufacturer is going to be next year because their Ford deal is up. Obviously, Ford is going to Penske. I can't imagine whatever they're paying Penske is just an add-on to their overall budget, so that they're going to have to cut from somewhere. And really, the only place for them to cut is probably from RPM. So I think, I don't know whether, I'd say that team is okay, as far as like their owner are possibly a little more stable, but they don't know who their manufacturer is going to be. and they need some manufacturer support to really, to really run well. I think what they've got though is that they've got sponsors who want to be there, who want to be with them. The instability comes from the manufacturer side right now more than anything else.
So would that, in theory, lead to the thought process that they might be in a good position if Dodge wanted to spend some money someplace, that he might be the good logical place to put together a decent program with decent factory support?
Well, it would, but then comes the question, of course, where do they get their cars and their engines from? Do they start building? It'd have to be a lot of support probably for them to be able to hire enough people to build cars themselves. And if I know, where are they going to get their engines from? Is Dodge going to start up their own engine shop, or are they going to try to find a team to open an engine shop? So, that's a big question, as well.
Have you gotten any feedback from Dodge and Chrysler as to their commitment for 2013? Are they committed to doing this at this point?
This is what I know. I know they've put in thousands of man hours and thousands of dollars into creating a 2013 car. And it would, if they left, they would certainly have wasted a lot of money and a lot of people's time. Now, that being said, I just don't know how much it's going to cost them, to find a new team or to start up their own engine shop. And, we haven't heard yet, I would say, from them that they're definitely are coming back in 2013. But what I know is that they've spent a lot of money, and they're in fact spending more money this year with displays and bringing cars to racetracks and engaging fans outside the racetrack than they have in the past years. So if they're left, it would kind of be a turn in what has been an increase in commitment this year, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're gone in 2013.
Hey, Bob, I wanted to ask you about, I don't know exactly how to ask this, the temperature of Kurt Busch. He's had some good runs and run up front, but the results haven't really been there. I guess it's probably not a surprise from what we kind of expected going into the season, but you get a sense that Kurt's dealing with this okay. I know when he does an interview, he says the right things, but it doesn't always sound sincere.
I think he's dealing with it okay outside of the car. I think when he's inside the car, he still gets very frustrated when they make some mistakes, that happen to teams with only 20 employees.
Right.
He gets frustrated. And if he can, the thing is that they often have pretty decent cars, but they just don't have kind of the depth. If they break apart a piece, it takes them longer to get something fixed. If they have problem on pit road, they don't lose 2 spots, they lose 10 spots.
Right.
And I think those are the things that frustrate him in the realm of competition. But I think that he is, I think if he could find money and get them a little bit stronger, he'd love to stay there. He'd love not to have all the politics that maybe he would have somewhere else. But, I think that, as the big question, I guess, will be, as the season goes along and, if you stay in the 20s in the points, you get more and more frustrated, and does it become less and less fun.
Bob Pockcrass from Sporting News, thanks so much for spending time with us. As always, we appreciate it. We'll see you in about a month or so up in MIS when you come our way.
All right, I can't wait. Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Bob Pockcrass, one of the most connected guys in the pits.
He's a good guy.
No, good. Terrific
Definitely
guy.
a good guy.
Yeah,
So,
guy.
Is
one of our regulars we can count on when we're looking to have a good quality guest for the show.
Well, it's
for
great
our fans,
because
for his fans, everybody.
We make no bones about it. We can't follow the tour week in and week out. It's impossible for us to do it, and it's great when we are able to connect with some of the people that do that every week, because there's nothing like following a series every week and knowing, exactly what's going on. You know more about what's happening than probably some of the drivers and some of the crew members. on the sport in a whole. So we're going to take a break. We went a little long with Bob, but that's okay. And we will come back, and we've got some open time, so we will discuss